Decades ago, the United States entered into a treaty with Russia in which we agreed to limit and reduce our missile capability. While we followed the agreement and the rules to the letter, Russia repeatedly violated its terms. It's been going on for many years. That is why I announced that the United States is officially withdrawing from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, or INF Treaty. Perhaps
Hey everybody, welcome to the 165th episode of Primo, NUTMEG. I'm your host Steve, and joining me today are John and Ethan. Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
Thanks for joining me. We are going to be reviewing the State of the Union today. Jack is supposedly going to be joining us as well at some point. Not sure if and when that's going to happen. But the State of the Union happened about a week ago by the time people are listening to this and want to go over it. But you know, since we're kind of delayed on that, I figured we could also start off talking about the Super Bowl, since that also happened about a week and a half ago. And a lot of people are saying that this was the most boring Super Bowl ever. It was actually, I think, the lowest scoring Super Bowl ever.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
I think going into the half, it was the second lowest scoring game ever, because Super Bowl IX was, they just had gotten a safety before the half, so it was 2 points at the half. But then throughout, at the end of the game, this ended up being the lowest scoring ever. And I guess that still could be an exciting game if it was more defense, but I don't think that is really what this was. It was just kind of a shitty game, just a boring, shitty game.
Yes, it was terrible. I think it had the lowest, I believe it had the lowest ratings in 10 years of any Super Bowl.
Wow.
But you
I think
figure,
that's what it was.
A lot of people are kind of bandwagon fans, and it was the Patriots' 6th championship. So
Exactly,
a lot of
yeah.
people would have been watching just for that. Plus, LA is a big market, but I guess the Rams just don't have that big of a audience out there.
I think LA is a big market, but it's not a big market for football.
Yeah.
I don't think they really care that much. And the Patriots, honestly, obviously we live in New England. We all know a lot of Patriot fans, and there's a few people I know who are Patriot fans, and they're into it so bad. It's creepy. Those people who their love for Brady and Gronk has gone a little bit beyond let's say what's appropriate for strangers. But I know a lot of Patriots fans who didn't even really care that much.
Yeah.
Because they're used to it. They don't even.
That is true. It's starting to get to the point now where it's not even really a thing anymore.
Yeah.
It's oh yeah, well, we win every year or two.
Yeah, you're used to it. You don't even.
Yeah.
You don't even care.
Well, it's the third Super Bowl in a row that the Pats have been to.
Yeah. Well, it's
I think
it's insane. I don't like to talk about it too much. I'm a Jets fan, so.
I think it was pretty boring. I think there was some good defensive schemes. I just saw a video that was talking about how Brian Flores, the de facto defensive coordinator for the Patriots, how he shifted from normally running man coverage to zone coverage, and that really threw a wrench in the Rams scheme of mostly jet sweeps or bootleg play action passes. So hearing that made me kind of appreciate it a little bit more, but I hate the Pats, so rooting for the Rams was really frustrating because it was just a complete nightmare watching the greatest show on turf just not happen.
The thing about the Rams, though, I understand that their plans kind of got screwed up, but they didn't adjust at all.
They didn't.
They just kept doing the wrong thing throughout the entire game.
Yeah, and for all the clout that Sean McVay has for where he's gotten this team, I was really expecting some kind of turnaround after the first half.
Right. You go to the locker room, you regroup, all right, this isn't working, let's do something else.
And not seeing that,
let's have a backup plan to that. There was no backup
plan. And that was
plan.
very odd because I didn't see any changes. I'm sure there was some, but it didn't work clearly.
Yeah.
and especially being a Packers fan and like being part of the new head coaching craze where they take people based on like who had dinner with Sean McVay, like just that whole concept and our new head coach being born out of that, and then seeing the results from the Super Bowl is pretty concerning. But
yeah. Well, originally my prediction was that the Saints were going to beat the Pats, and I think that's what would have happened had that call not get fucked up in the NFC Championship.
I think so too.
So I don't know.
I think Sean Payton's pretty crazy enough to just start throwing anything out there.
I guess there was actually, there were people online who were petitioning to have like a rematch of the NFC Championship, like a redo. But there's something in the NFL rules that like the refs calls are final or something, and you can't redo a game.
And it'll be interesting to see if they make any changes to that, if you can challenge anything, because supposedly Canadian football does that.
Really?
But yeah, I don't know.
I never watched it.
Yeah, I just heard that from a friend of
Nobody.
ours. So. Yeah.
People. I would be really surprised if that happened. That would be highly unusual. The majority of sports, there's very little review. Even in sports where they have review, like in fighting, like in MMA, it never works. People challenge it, and it just always as a rule. Almost as a rule, it never works.
It's kind of interesting because there have been calls like that have definitely changed the outcome of games, even like the conference championship games. But I think none of them had the potential of. None of them were like at the tail end, so that's why this is probably the most talked about. Because you've had stuff like the Fail Mary for the Packers Seahawks games. That's the only conference one on my mind right now. But I know of like Dez and the catch issue, and so I think because this was like the very tail end and it could have sealed it right then and there, that there's more talk. And I kind of hope that there's something about it because the officiating was like really bad this season, especially in the first like 4 weeks. And you notice that they changed it. They stopped calling roughing the passer, but so we'll see. It's definitely interesting.
Well, it's kind of funny. I was listening to Bill Burr complain leading up to the Super Bowl about how it seems like the rules are all kind of shifted now to help the offense, which I guess ostensibly is true, but you didn't really see that in the Super Bowl at all. Like, I don't know. Was it just... why do you think it was that both offenses just sucked? I mean, because it wasn't... I don't think it was like a stellar defense performance. I just think that the offense on both the Pats and the Rams was not performing.
I think... I can't speak for what Wade Phillips did with the Rams. I mean, I know what Brian... Like, I saw that video on Brian Flores switching up his scheme. I think Goff just isn't meant for big games. I think they kind of got lucky with him in the beginning of the season,
We are very blessed to call this nation our home, and that's what America is. It is our home.
The garnishes for turkey or chicken are fried oysters, thin slices of ham, slices of lemon, fried sausages, or forced meatballs. Also parsley.
All right, so we all just dropped some acid, and Jack showed up. Hey, Jack.
Hey.
Jack, I could be wrong because I don't have the WordPress site anymore tracking the power rankings, but I believe that this is your 20th appearance on the show.
All right.
So congratulations.
Thanks.
Jack, for everybody out there, was also on the first episode of the show, so it's good to have you back on. We were just talking about the Super Bowl and about how boring it was and how lame it was and how neither offense really performed. Did you watch that at all?
I did, and I concur. I mean, it was all right for defense. It's funny, though.
Because I don't think they really performed. I don't think there was, like, a good performance. I think it was just that neither offense was really doing the job.
Well, yeah, the Rams' offensive line was like, fucking fire those guys next year. Like, they were terrible. there was that one right guard, evil genius Belichick was watching all the tape, and they fucking targeted that guy so hard. Like every blitz was like right at the right guard, and he just was like just getting his ass handed to him. And so that was kind of like, okay, I don't know. They were getting Goff a lot, but it didn't seem like real. Like you say, like it was the failure of the offense rather than like the performance of the defense.
Right. And then you know what pissed me off too is they weren't really like running the ball, right? I mean, it was just like a bunch of
they couldn't
passes.
because they just kept going for that right guard, and like they would be behind the line already at the time of the handoff. They tried, and plus Gurley was hurt, so like they kind of had that big dude who was more like a fullback. So like that's really like the only guy they had was this massive, just like breadbasket carrying kind of guy, and even he got Gilmore punched the ball like right out of his hands. Like it was almost a turnover. So like what can you do? And then the Rams defense was like kind of good, I guess, but like you figure after the first 20 times they'd try to cover Edelman underneath maybe with two guys instead of doing these crazy blitzes and stuff.
Yeah. And again, I mean, Brady wasn't really doing that good of a job.
No.
Like he was
but he had 8 years in the pocket. Like he was just standing there.
Yeah.
And then the one time he did get touched, fucking give him a rough in the passer.
You mean when he didn't get touched?
Right. He's like a punter now. You're not allowed to touch Tom
hit.
Brady. If you touch him at all while he's in mid throw, that's a foul.
Whiffed him with air.
He is good at staying in the pocket, though.
Yeah. Stands right up, 2 steps up, looks around.
As much as
he can't scramble.
As much as you say that. As much as I hate him, he
runs faster than me, and
he's
10 years older
excellent
than I am.
at staying in the pocket. Very few people have like that.
It takes
a
knowing that
lot
the
of-
refs are going to call a personal
that
foul
helps.
if you get touched.
It does take a lot of discipline though, just to step into that pocket and just stay there. That's it. That's something that like Brady a lot of times doesn't. I mean, okay, if you're anywhere near being a Patriots fan, Brady's the best thing that God's ever made in the world. But if you're like me, if you're a New York fan, you hate him, you hate his guts. But that alone, the ability to step into the pocket, stop, and read your passers, and not even be the most athletic, because he's not the most athletic quarterback in the world. He's not the most precise quarterback in the world, but he makes excellent reads most of the time, and that is like. That's probably the best you can ask for a quarterback is to make excellent reads when you need to.
He's
your O-line can be as good as possible, but if you don't stay in the pocket, it doesn't matter.
No, right.
Yeah.
He's a great offensive general. That's for sure.
It was weird seeing Edelman.
But I hate him.
Right.
It was weird seeing Edelman shine as much as he did because he wasn't doing that during the regular season.
Yeah, it's funny.
Sure.
Those 4 games off.
My
Man.
father-in-law, he came back from his Super Bowl party, and he was festive,
Sure.
And he's like, "Oh man, Edelman's incredible." I'm like, "Yeah, steroids will do that." And
Yeah.
He just like shut up, Like,
He must have been happy though, because we saw them in that preseason game. So like we saw the Super Bowl champions play this year.
that's true. Well, or their backups.
Yeah, that's true. But as far as like the quarterback thing and not roughing the quarterback, like I think that's not just specific. I mean, I know, yes, it is very much about Brady, but do you think it's also is it also the case where like the longer you've been in the NFL and the more prestige you get, you get more like the refs on your side more often?
Well, Brady actively canvasses too. Like anytime anything happens to him and he feels like there's any sort of problem, he like runs to the umpire, the guy who wears the white hat, and just starts like crying and he's like a coach, A coach is like just start badgering the refs. Like Brady does the same thing, and then sometimes they're just like, all right, we'll throw a flag, whatever.
Do you mean get more support like the player gets more support because the refs like him, or the refs give the player more support because they have more clout and get more viewers?
Yeah,
and like if they're gone,
I think it's the latter. Like it seems like if you're a bigger name, then the refs are more on your side, and you can kind of expect not to get sacked as hard.
Yeah.
Or like if you're a star receiver, you could like push off a little more than maybe you'd be able to.
So that's kind of bullshit,
Hopkins.
right? Like that's not how it was back, in the '60s or whatever.
It probably was.
Think so?
Yeah.
I guess so.
There
it was still a business back then,
Yeah.
right?
There wasn't NFL Red Zone back then either, so there wasn't like
right.
people aren't just like, I want to see the best plays. So you got to have spectacular throws to get spectacular catches.
Well, that's definitely true. Yeah, it's definitely much more of a passing league than it used to be.
Oh, totally.
That's for sure.
Totally. And like the whole concussion regulations like really made it so like the receivers just can kind of like just be out there, and they kind of know that they're not gonna like get their clock clean and end their season or like damage.
Yeah, because most
brains.
of the old players looked like tight ends, and now you got all these like, I don't know, not as built guys that can run like a lot faster than back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, or they were like
It's
a
very
Jerry
different.
Rice type who was just
Yeah.
like really tall, kind of.
Well, speaking of old timers, did you guys see that NFL 100 commercial?
I saw it.
Because it's strange. I think that was like the big commercial from the night. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know if there was some other commercial that made headlines like there typically is, but it seems like the NFL 100 was the one that everybody I know was talking about.
Yeah,
Which one was that?
It's the one where
it's like a banquet.
Yeah, it's like a banquet, and there's like a golden football on top of this cake, and then it falls off, and like everybody's like scrambling, and they start like playing, and it's all these old timers.
Yeah, and they're making
okay.
like puns, and
Yeah.
I liked it.
They
I didn't know who
Terry Bradshaw out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, there was.
I didn't know who
Was one part of
the
them.
I didn't know who the girl was at the end.
I heard that she's some like high school player or something, and she
Yeah.
like set all these records, but I don't think anybody knew who she was either.
Had to
Yeah.
sprinkle in the social justice a little.
Like, yeah, exactly.
So hard in the whole thing.
Oh yeah,
Every commercial break, there was like, "Don't worry, we care about black people, guys."
that or robots.
Yeah,
a lot
right.
of creepy AI stuff like that insurance commercial. I think it was with the baby.
It's just
It's like, I can't teach you love, and he's like sad, and then he starts laughing.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like
It just
weird,
it
man.
seemed obvious. It did. It really seemed obvious. It was such a hard like, we're gonna stand for the national anthem, guys, but don't worry, we're cool.
Yeah.
And it's just like
Well, that's what it's always about, right? Finding that middle ground.
I gotta wonder, does that work? Like, I mean, I guess it probably.
it's football.
I guess it probably does, but like,
Get your toes in all the markets.
it's so like, yeah, it's so blatant though.
You
Like,
think Joe
it's so
Sixpack
obvious.
fucking gives a shit about social justice? No.
Especially
Well,
on
why is
in
They're
the
the ones who
Super
stopped
Bowl.
watching when Kaepernick started kneeling.
Right.
Okay, but why is Maroon 5 and Big Boy doing the halftime show?
Well, that's for
I don't know.
that's for
I
the
don't-
girlfriend and the wife.
Yeah, exactly.
And all the
Yeah.
other people who have to go to the Super Bowl party.
I don't watch the halftime show ever.
And then
You're
didn't
lucky.
even
It
follow
was
up
terrible.
on that SpongeBob halftime. So she had like the NHL showing it.
What?
You
Yeah,
didn't hear,
the-
you didn't hear about that?
I don't know what you're talking about. What?
The SpongeBob like Sweet Victory song, and they like teased that he was gonna make an appearance like that from that episode, and so they showed like a clip of it, but like right before the song from the show would start, it was like Sicko Mode, and by Travis Scott, and so a lot of people were ticked off, and then like at some NHL game, like they actually played the song.
Okay.
I don't know. That was
word of what you just said.
no.
I'm trying.
I just know
I get it.
because that was the other big headline,
I'm
other than
tracking If you went on Reddit that whole night, that's
Yeah.
all it was about.
that was the other headline other than the commercial. So
Okay.
you're just not hip enough.
yeah.
I guess
I'm definitely not.
I'll spend enough time on Reddit, I guess.
That's the answer to all of your questions. If you're
That's
ever
true.
like, I wonder what I'm doing wrong, it's probably that you're not spending enough time on Reddit.
Well, I have one last NFL thing to talk about because I listen to Bill Burr's podcast a lot, which I already have mentioned. And he, around this time of year, bitches relentlessly on every single episode about how the NFL championships prior to the Super Bowl don't count because people don't really talk about them. Like when they talk about, I think like the Packers, for example,
Yeah.
like they'll say they've won Super Bowls. Yeah, they won the first two, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So they'll like talk about how many Super Bowls they won, but not how many NFL championships that they've won total. And this really annoys him and gets under his skin. He's always asking, why don't they count? Why don't the NFL championships count? So I just wanted to bring that to the table. Do any of you guys like really feel annoyed by that? Is that something that you think is a
By
thing?
what he's saying, or
No,
It sounds like
By the-
disgruntled Giants fan talk to me. They were great in 1927.
but the funny thing is he's supposedly a Patriots fan.
Yeah, he has to be, right?
Yeah.
I thought he was an Eagles fan.
No.
Why did I think?
No. Well, because he did there was this, one of the things he's most famous for was he went out in Philadelphia one time.
And he started trashing. the
Yeah,
crowd.
because like
Remember
whoever
that.
was going on after him was who the crowd wanted to see.
Yeah.
So he just started berating the
That was a
crowd and
great-
just
Yeah.
like
That was a great
insulting him. It was actually really good. That's one of the most famous things he's done. But I mean,
I think it's all. I mean, it's technicality, right? Like,
I think it's marketing, right? Because like you want to make the Super Bowl seem big.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, it's like fucking it's 55 years ago or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
are you really gonna care that much about who won the NFL title back then? I mean, also too, were there really like playoff games back then, or was it just whoever had the best record?
I don't know. I think it shifted. I think right before the Super Bowl, it was kind of the same way. I could be wrong, but I know back before then, it was just like best record essentially. Because I know like the Packers like first championship or whatever was just like they had like a 13-0 season, and like I think like the second best team was like 12-1.
Right. So I don't know.
I think the Super Bowl started as more like an exhibition game too, right? Between the AFL and the NFL to kind of
Right,
see
because
who was the
they
best
were still
FL.
independent then, right? That's like before
Yeah.
they merged.
Yeah, they were all their own leagues.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to think about because it's hard to imagine. Like, I don't know if the XFL started up. Like, it's hard to imagine them partnering with the NFL.
Well, the way I understand it was that it's kind of like rival networks. Like CBS had the NFL, and then NBC had the AFL. So that's why, like, the AFL I think kind of got its start because also the NFL was more like Midwest northeastern areas. So people started kind of moving larger populations towards like the West. They needed like more teams, kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I don't know if it would, because then you'd have to put all the AFL championships in there too. So there'd be like co-champions for those years, which would be weird.
But like, so Ethan, as a Packers fan, does it bother you that people say, do you know how many Super
That
Bowl
they'd, like-
titles they have?
5, I think.
I don't know where my fucking phone is. But yeah,
Either
so,
no, 4. Sorry.
does
Yeah,
it bother
the
you
first
that like
two,
their
and then
their number doesn't get
5.1.
more inflated, or we're not looking at the full picture of how many NFL titles that they won also?
I mean, it kind of bothers me. In a sense, though, it's all very odd because, like, there's always some degree of, like, it all just being arbitrary anyway. Because, like, even something like the Rams-Pats game, that, like, possibly non-existing because if the refs got that one call right, and then the Saints, who were probably going to play a lot better than the Rams did. So, like, there's a bunch of, like, stuff behind the scenes. But regarding, like, just counting, like, former
Yeah, it's just
titles,
like counting essentially.
yeah,
Because
I don't understand why people like get in such a big like,
wow, they
fit
won
about
13 NFL championships. Holy shit! So
Well, that's including
you
Super Bowls.
especially should care.
That's including
No,
Super
no,
Bowls.
no. They won. Okay, yeah, you're right. They won 11 before
Yeah.
the Super Bowl. 29, 30, 31, 36, 39, 44, 61, 62, 65, 66, 67.
But they're not
No,
Super
66
Bowls.
and 6. No, we won 4 Super Bowls.
They're not.
66, 67.
You got second place.
Oh, they won.
11
Okay, so
times.
those
Favre
years.
won one
Well,
in 95.
So maybe
or something, and
hold
then
on.
Rodgers.
I think we have the answer. This
Well,
may
yeah.
be the key to Bill Burr's whole answering Bill Burr,
Second.
because 66 and 67, the Packers were the NFL champions and they were also the Super Bowl champions. So you'd have to like
Right.
add that on top of it.
Oh, did that count twice?
Yeah, well, it would in that case. So
And-
maybe that's why they don't count it.
And
because-
like I was saying, you'd have to assume there was AFL champions those years too, so
Right.
there'd have to be like co-champions for each of those years when they were
Gotcha,
still
okay.
separate leagues.
so there you go. That's why it doesn't count.
Yeah,
That makes
because they
perfect
changed
sense.
the whole thing. It's
Call him
like,
up and tell him.
The American League and the National League, weren't they separate like way back when, before the World Series happened?
Yeah.
So like, why don't they have the National League champions count then?
Well, his whole thing that he bitches about is like, I guess I think the Lakers or some shit. I forget. I'm not a basketball fan at all. I think it's like the Lakers, like their ABA championships count or something like that. So
Oh, is that why they won 40 titles or whatever?
Yeah. It's like why do those count and why don't the NFL titles count? But that's why, because of the Packers, because of the fucking Packers.
And
I
the
didn't come
Bears,
here
and
just
the
to have my
Bears.
team trash talk.
Well, that answers that. All right.
Got me.
Okay.
No, they had.
You got him Googling.
All right, let's take a. Holy shit, we've gone 25 minutes already. All right, let's take a break so I can pee, and then we'll go to the State of the Union.
Time for another acid trip. Time for another acid.
We still
trip.
had 13. We still had 13.
are saying that they are.
We're gonna put the State of the Union review on hold.
PolitiFact over here wants to make sure we get it right.
Yeah, it's like asterisks. So they have 11 NFL championships. They have 2 AFL, NFL Super Bowl championships.
Right, which tie in
and
for the NFL
2
ones.
Super Bowl championships.
Yeah.
So the years that they won the NFL championship and the Super Bowl both count as one, apparently.
The 2 AFL, NFL Super Bowls, they're counting as NFL championships.
So it's
I
almost
guess-
like those Super Bowls don't count.
Yeah, because they were exhibition games.
All right.
Wait, which one?
It's like the Pro Bowl. The best team from this
the
league and the best
first and
team from that
second
league.
Super Bowl don't count.
Get together and just mess around.
Apparently.
But they had,
that's what we're
they
saying.
had playoffs. 1967 playoffs.
Well, who did they beat? The Chiefs or something?
Yeah, I think it was the Chiefs. It
Well,
must have
check to see if the Chiefs for those years are just AFL champions.
been. Oh man. Open a can of worms here. My whole point was originally that this shouldn't really matter, but I guess it does.
No, it doesn't.
No, just to Ethan. Ethan's the only one.
It does matter. It just I just proved it.
So how many championships do the Packers have?
They have 13.
Shouldn't it be 15 though?
You remember that
Well,
one where they beat the
15,
Pullman
there's
team?
2 that overlap with the other ones.
Exactly. So is it 13 or 15?
They have 13. I'm not going to double count 2 of them.
But you should. Because
Why?
they won the NFL championship and they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, like in the year they were the Super Bowl champions, they were also the NFC conference champions, which back then was its own league. So
I'll take it. I mean, I'll just I'll
2
add,
more, yes.
I'll add to it, but
So was an NFL title essentially like an NFC championship? It wasn't,
yeah,
right?
it was.
But was it?
Well, that was the only league, or that was the only conference then, so it was the whole league.
I guess.
All right. We've got too sidetracked by this. It doesn't matter.
I don't care.
All right, let's
My
talk
team
about
didn't exist before the AFL, so
let's talk about the State of the Union.
Yep.
All right, State of the Union. So
with you.
the start of the State of the Union, he brought out all those people. The first was Melania. Melania got an ovation.
The First Lady of the United States,
Then he had the veterans from D-Day.
Private First Class Joseph Riley, Staff Sergeant Irving Locker, and Sergeant Herman Zaitchek. Hey.
And then also is it Buzz Aldrin?
yeah.
We are joined by one of the Apollo 11 astronauts who planted that flag, Buzz Aldrin.
I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about any of that. It just seemed like standard kind of rigmarole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you bring out people who are supposed to be exemplify great American traits. That's what any president would do.
It's too bad we faked the moon landing, though.
Yeah, right. Fake space. Hashtag fake space.
hey, he's great at keeping his mouth shut. I mean,
Good. I wish
that's
Bob was
true.
here.
He did look very uncomfortable, but Buzz Aldrin always looks very uncomfortable everywhere.
Yeah, I saw some interview with him not too long ago, and he was kind of getting like confused about stuff too. So
Yeah, I got that. I get that vibe from him too. You
Yeah.
see him and you're like, he's starting to lose it.
right.
Yeah, which
Hey, whatever.
you live long enough, you.
Who knows
how
what zero
old is
G
he?
does to your brain?
pretty-
Well, he's like 90 or something, isn't he? I mean, he's getting up there.
Yeah, he's up there for sure.
So the first thing that I made note of during the speech was 8 minutes in, and Trump said,
But we must reject the politics of revenge, resistance, and retribution, and embrace the boundless potential of cooperation, compromise, and the common good.
and this was also the point where Pelosi did the sarcastic
Yeah.
clap, supposedly.
Yeah.
But and not to harp on her, and if she has any issues, I'm not trying to,
I'll
be
harp
mean
on her.
about it. But like, I don't. She said that it was not a sarcastic clap, and I believe her because if you kind of watch her the whole night, which you can't help to do because she's right there next to Trump, she kind of has weird mannerisms.
Yeah, she's like a
the
gargoyle.
entire night.
Facing the papers.
Well, like,
No, she does. She does.
She was shuffling papers the entire time.
She does have weird.
And like she was like stroking her hair, and then she would like
jawing a lot too.
When she did a standing ovation, she was like standing long. There was a point where she stood longer than anybody. Like she was still standing, and everybody else
looked around. I was like, oh yeah, whoops.
And she like kept looking at Pence. Like I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to be mean. I just think maybe like there is something that she's dealing with.
Her and Buzz Aldrin, right?
Yeah. So I mean,
nah, she's weird.
I don't think she
There's
was
no
doing
way
a
around
sarcastic
it.
clap. I just think that she has really weird mannerisms for whatever reason.
I saw a great meme about that. It was her doing the long clap, and then it said "Kami Shark Doo Doo."
So
That's amazing.
it is funny that people thought that though. Again, because again,
It looks
she's-
like it.
It kind of does, but again, like she's so obviously she has these weird mannerisms.
Part of that though is the internet's just a meme factory, right?
Yeah,
Because it's not about whether it's true or not; it's whether it's funny or not.
that's true.
Nobody cares if she actually was sarcastic. It's funny that it looks sarcastic.
What was that thing in front of her? It was like 3 little bottles, looked like a fancy salt and pepper set. Or
I don't
something.
know either. I didn't notice that at one point.
Pence is just drinking like regular water, and she's got like this little serving tray. Maybe it like keeps her from her fits from coming back or something.
There's a few things I could guess, but I'm going to leave it alone.
Right.
Some rituals or
This one brings you up. This one brings you down. This one's pure adrenochrome. Glug, glug, glug. That's probably why she was all like, yeah.
So one of the first things Trump started talking about was about how we're adding so many new jobs to the economy, and we added 600,000 manufacturing jobs, and there's more people working now than ever. 157 million people are working.
More people are working now than at any time in the history of our country. 157 million people at work.
And not to go down a whole rabbit hole here, but I've recently been reading the book Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber. And it's an interesting book because it's about how roughly 40% of people self-report that their jobs are bullshit. They're unneeded and they're pointless. So I was kind of thinking about this during this whole part of the speech, thinking about, is this really the best measure of the economy, just that people are working? Because people could be just doing idiotic jobs. I mean, is that really
Yes.
a measure of how the economy is performing overall?
No.
No, it's just stat padding.
Oh, and it's also like this is how well people aren't going to riot because they can get Christmas presents or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's important for the political class.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, they're happy because, people are being, I don't know.
to be
I would say
fair,
subdued
not
or-
rioting
Just kept
is
busy.
also good for an economy too.
Kept busy.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
At least in the short term, riots don't help your economy.
just because I've been reading this book, like, I've been kind of thinking about it more and more. Like, it seems like, because people can be so productive nowadays with technology and whatnot, it's like, does everybody need to be working 40 hours a week? I mean, is that just kind of something that's carried over from the past, or is it, I don't know.
No, I
Do
think
we need
it's
to be?
I think it's on the decline. Because I mean, before it used to be 50 hours.
Yeah.
Before that,
well,
it was
but
higher.
that was a
so-
long time ago, right?
Right, but I mean, like as stuff innovates, and I mean now with like technology and making it easier to produce wealth. And
This is a common complaint you hear from the left, is that productivity has been increasing over time thanks to technology.
But consumption increases too. It's called Jevons paradox. You can't every bit you produce, it's going to be taken and then some. So like the hours are being worked, they're just not being worked in the United States. They're being worked in Bangladesh and China and
Well, no, but American work. I mean, because again, more Americans are working now than ever have worked before.
because there are more Americans. That's just a
Yeah,
little. That's
sure.
a fun little
Okay,
way
but
of saying that.
But employment rates are also supposedly down. I mean, he was saying, especially minority employment rates.
Unquestionably,
are down.
unemployment rates are down.
Sure.
African American, Hispanic American, and Asian American unemployment have all reached their lowest levels ever recorded.
You just can't fake that. It's hard to fake an unemployment stat.
Well,
Okay, it's hard to fake an unemployment stat.
you're no longer looking for work. All right, now there's less unemployed people.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
no longer
Well,
looking
no,
for
I mean
work.
when I say it's hard to fake, I mean they do fake unemployment stats because they can say people are quote unquote out of the job market
Yeah.
because they're just not looking anymore. But everybody knows that now. You know, like
Right.
the right and the left know when either side is faking those numbers. So once you get past those kind of things, I mean, when it goes up, it goes up. Like, there's no question about that. The question if that's a good thing or not, I mean, I don't know. That's a hard thing to guess, right? So even if 40% of jobs don't mean anything, if you get 10 new jobs, that means 6 of those jobs meant something.
And a lot of it's
That's better than nothing.
And they mean things, just maybe not. You go home and you're like, wow, that was really, you know, like I'm really doing the right thing, or I'm doing something that matters or whatever. It may not fulfill that need, but
Right.
maybe if you hire 20 more employees, you get a tax break. Maybe there's some reason for you to hire people for other reasons as a business.
Okay. But I guess, I mean, like, for the average American,
Well, it's good for them
When-
because they get money. And then they could do whatever they want to do. Go hang out and drink on the weekends at the bar, or buy a house, or buy a car, or get
It
a new
just-
phone, whatever.
I guess just when you're thinking about this from bird's eye view, it seems kind of backwards, because you wouldn't want to be working more, right? Like, we all should want to be working less. Like, ideally, you would want to have complete unemployment, right? Like,
I don't know. People love overtime. Some people do. Can't get enough of that shit.
I'm not sold on the completely unemployed guaranteed income thing. Apart from economically, I'm not sold on it even on a psychological, even spiritual level. I'm not sold on it because so I've worked in seasonal companies since I was 18 or 19 years old. So I've experienced a pretty good amount of time not working, and like I was financially prepared for it and those kind of things. And it's miserable. It's awful. It's the worst. And I'm a guy who has an incredible amount of interests too. Like, I'm very diversified in my interests. And I'm super introverted, so I can be by myself for hours and not even notice. And after a month or two, it's awful. It's the worst. You're like, I just want to go back to work. I need something to do.
I'm not working right now, and I don't have it. I don't have those sensations really ever. Like, there's plenty of shit for me to do. you
Well,
know?
it depends what you mean by working, right? Like, I'm not saying that you need to have the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
But like, have work to be doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like-
that I can see.
Like, yeah.
It's like
That's what I mean.
that mouse experiment, Utopia 22 or whatever. Have you ever heard of that?
yeah.
Where this guy set up this mouse enclosure and it had like everything a mouse could ever want. It had like bedding, food, water, its own. Like, it was huge for the amount of mice in it, so they had plenty of space to like do whatever they wanted to do. And with everything provided for them and being taken care of, they like lost their minds. Like, they stopped doing mouse things. Some of them like forgot how to groom themselves. Some forgot like social cues and would just like eat other mice just for like casual interest. And eventually the whole population collapsed. Like it followed kind of this logarithmic curve where it went up, and then started to flatten, and then just nosedived and never recovered because they like forgot how to be mice.
Well, that's that term. I listened to something talking about it recently about that. The term anti-fragile, things that get better as they are like hurt or injured or experience hardship. And that's what we are.
Right.
We're anti-fragile. We need it. If we don't get it, we fall apart.
Yeah, that like you say, where you need like something kind of keeping you motivated or going or whatever. Like, I think that's important. Whether or not you get financially compensated for that, and it's mandatory on certain days and whatever. That's,
Right. Yeah. But that's a totally different conversation than a guaranteed income kind of deal. you
Right,
know?
because then what would people be doing all the time? Like, even now, people have a lot of leisure time. You know, like, even if they are working full time, let's say, before you would have to worry about like, oh well, I also need to like make sure I cook dinner and make sure that the laundry's done by hand or whatever. You know, there was a lot more. Even in your non-obligated time, you had much more things to do. But now I think because of technology, I guess, and maybe just the overall structure of society, when you're out of work, you're just like, that's it. You know, you can just do whatever you want. And people really come up with some like wild shit to do, you know?
One of the reasons kind of like that I'm so suspicious of it is that, like you said, now we have more leisure time than we've ever had in the history of mankind.
Yeah.
Like, at any point. And a lot of us just veg out to Netflix all day long.
Right. Or
And so it's like, if
become
we had
furries or
Yeah, exactly right. If we had nothing to do, you know, and those kind of lifestyles, they lead to a lot of unhealthy, like,
idle hands are the devil's tools,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. And imagine, not so like there are particular people who would find things to do, but like imagine a whole population just with nothing to do. Yeesh.
Well, that's when people start going to the Meriden Mall and just like beating the hell out of each other because I don't know.
But so would you want to have jobs for only the reason to keep people?
I don't think
being
that
idle?
will. I don't think that will ever matter, because I don't think that kind of decision will ever matter. Because I don't. First of all, I think you won't ever have to manufacture those jobs. I really think the idea of innovation and AI. I think if you got to a point where there was no way to get a job, and that's actually the opposite of what we've seen. Every time we've seen innovation, it's created more jobs, not less jobs. There's just been different types of jobs. So like the classic Luddite example, cars have created millions of more jobs than horse and buggy ever could. But even if that were to happen, you're just screwed. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't change human nature because you want to. At that point, the system probably inevitably collapses and start over again. But I think that danger has been exaggerated because we haven't seen that anywhere. Computers made more jobs. I think automated cars eventually will make more jobs. That's just how it's always worked.
Well, I don't know if I completely agree with that. Like if you take farming, for instance, like one farmer nowadays could farm like 40,000 acres like no problem.
Right, but that one farmer who has 40,000 acres has now allowed there to be a city, and that city has created so much more jobs than you could have ever had in a rural environment. So they're going to be different jobs. You're not going to be able to be a farmer anymore, but there's nothing you can do about it.
It frees up labor to go explore other.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you can't. It's one of those things, and that's one of my issues with the conversation is people talk about it as if we can manufacture reality, and you can't. Like, you just have to adapt and move and change and adapt to overcome, you know? There's nothing you can do. You just have to adapt and change with it. But that's always going to be true no matter where you are, you know what I mean? Like, if it's if it's 3,000 years ago, the Serengeti floods and you've got to move. Like, that's just... That's not even like human civilization. That's the essence of existence is you have to change.
Right.
But it is kind of artificial now, right? Because it's all based on like capital flows, like where money is being invested.
It's different for sure, but it's always but even that is the act of man. And 3, 4, 10,000 years ago, the act of man would still influence your life, and you still had to move, still had to change. You know, in the end, it's not that different for you. You know, because you can say some rich guy way over there changed it. Okay, well, yeah, but in the end, you're still going to have to change. So the whole conversation for me is kind of like, I wouldn't say it's a moot point because it's good to think about those things. I just don't see any, like, it's not like you could micromanage a solution to a problem where you can't even really conceptualize at that point.
And you can't even conceptualize what's going to come out of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the Luddites, you can't conceptualize all the stuff that come out.
Oh, there's no way
birth
that they
of the
could
car.
possibly understand, like...
Right, so...
Yeah, there's no way. They couldn't understand how, like air travel. They had no idea that was coming. And the crazy amount of industry that would bring, they had no idea, you know?
I don't know. I guess just in sort of a loose sense, I would think that it would be better if more people were kind of pursuing their passion and able to work at things that they preferred as opposed to just punching buttons or...
But a lot of people don't have a passion.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it sounds cynical, but I think it's more to do with the way society's structured and how we're educated or what we think as sort of socially what we think is real or good or important or morally or ethically important.
Yeah, and to build off that, I mean, it like with innovation comes the possibility that some people might find that niche. I mean, look at the people right now that are creating YouTube channels and Twitch streaming, like just playing video games. There's people that Twitch stream themselves just out in public doing random shit. Like, you get people that, I mean, there's so many people that's like what they want to do. Like, they invest into that. And they wouldn't have been able to do that 10 years ago.
Right.
So, I mean, like, there's all kinds of avenues that open up with that like I agree. I think there's like a certain degree of not necessity, but like it's definitely good to think about, but I don't think like worrying about it really is giving enough like credit to like what happens, like what we know and what we don't know. Like, we know that things in the past have opened up all kinds of paths of exploration and new jobs and new hobbies for people, and then and we don't know what'll happen from now. So,
and I think it's important too to keep. We often take our mindset away from like an individual mindset, and the most important thing for me is what am I going to do, and what is what are my sons going to do? Those are things that matter to me. So it's like I could try to be consumed. I'm not saying you're consumed, but like there are definitely people who are consumed with the fear of the future and of everything falling apart. And I could be consumed with that, or I could say, "Listen, kid, you're not gonna go get your commercial driving license. Like you're not gonna go get your CDL, Charles. That's not a good idea.
Yeah.
That job won't exist in 15 years. Like let's think ahead here. Think about where we're gonna go, what jobs are gonna exist, and let's move in that direction. And I think that's what people should do, because you can throw your hands up as much as you want, but you're better off. And you're gonna be. And I think like you said, the passions thing, I think it's totally exaggerated. I think your brain is much more malleable and movable than you think it is, and you can find things you're excited about that you just had no idea about. Right. You just didn't know.
Yeah, I think the ends is what's important. If that's like self-fulfillment or flourishing in whatever sort of psychological way you determine consciously or unconsciously. Then if the means are employment and a good job that pays well and makes you feel good at night, and you know that it could be a career, and whatever the parameters are people think of good jobs, and hey, then more power to you. But I think as a society it would be better if people were actively working towards things that actually like were making things better. Because I think a lot of people, I don't know, maybe people who think too much like I do, it's tough to like get excited about something where you kind of realize like it's either a scam or destroying the planet or something to that degree. Like I think if that were to change in some meaningful way, then I think a lot more people would be a lot more excited about doing maybe less, like cool things. You know what I'm saying?
I suppose. But to take the reverse perspective, like if technology does advance to the point where a lot of jobs do become obsolete, especially when you have people fighting for higher wages, and that's been the whole thing in the fast food industry, right? Or like you just mentioned with truckers, they could be replaced. And people do find fewer jobs available at some point, let's say 20 years from now. Do you think that we're actually going to see people or governments offering universal basic income, or do you think that there's just naturally going to be more jobs that occur?
I'm leaning towards the latter.
I'm going to say both, but not for the reason you said. So you do have countries now offering universal basic income, but it won't be because there aren't any jobs. It's because government always wants to get more, and that's an easy way to get more. Mm-hmm. I'll offer you $1, and I'll take 30% of it.
But again, government's interest is also to keep people occupied, right? Because they don't want people storming the barricades.
Yeah, it's like a bread and circuses thing, I think.
Yeah, that's why they subsidize.
It's going to be a balance,
and
sure. Yeah, they're not going to give. I'm not saying offer everyone universal basic income, but there are already. But keep in mind, governments are politicians. They're not just governments, and politicians need to be elected. And a great way to get elected is to offer people universal basic income.
So I guess it's a question of what they can do to keep people more placated. Is it just give them money and have them staring at screens all day, or is it have them sitting in an office staring at screens all day?
Oh, it's worse than that. You have them stare at a screen all day, which is extraordinarily unhealthy for you. Yeah. So then you get sick and depressed, and then where do you go? You go to your NHS, your national healthcare system. Who's run by who? The government. And then you get old and you go to your retirement home. Oh, they can't afford a retirement homes because they've been paying 60 to 80% taxes their whole life. So
send them to the Soil and Green factory.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that's the problem with those kind of systems, is that they're well-meaning by some people, but in the end, they make you weaker. And if you're weaker,
it's the process of domestication. Really, you get enclosed and everything's provided for you. And
yeah,
it's actually, when you first started mentioning this, the first thing that came to mind was the Eloi in the Time Machine. And they were just like the living cattle of the Morlocks, who were actually like the workers.
That's a great movie, actually. You had a serious point. Yeah, okay.
Especially the illustrated children's classic.
Okay, sure.
Town auction.
Sure. I'm just saying, like that actually. I have a vivid picture in my mind still.
But there's only so much that like certain things like that are sustainable, like UBI.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually it turned into a bubble.
Yeah, but when you're printing all the money, what's it matter?
Yeah, exactly.
The business cycle already is a huge
I mean, no, it
bubble,
will
so.
collapse. So socialism to that level will collapse. It always has. It always will. But your house burns to the ground by then, and your kids are starving to death and eating rats. So it's like it won't work, but it's going to be really bad before then.
I don't know though. If totalitarianism was total, it may work.
Okay.
If we were like a big hive of termites, which if you think about termites or ants, they're just sterile females. Like they all are separate beings, but they have to be one because of their social organization. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so when people are diminished and left out of options because, imagine if you were like a 3-year-old child and your mother just left you, you'd just be like, whatever, just come back, please come back. So if you're unable to do anything besides the will of your mom, and your mom says, all right, you better do what I say or you're not going to have dinner or whatever, you're just going to do it. Which is, a lot of domesticated animals take on juvenile traits, and like a lot of people psychologically and physically are becoming more like juvenile, I think, compared to if you look at people like Australian Aborigines before they were contacted or like when they were still in shackles kind of thing. I mean, those are like men, you know what I'm saying? They're not like children at all, but then you go around the local mall, like there's a lot of like 30-year-old kids, myself included, walking around.
Sure. So how do you stop that trend? How do you make people objectively more free?
Make them broke. Let them be poor.
Yeah,
I mean, it sucks, but it's like that's how it works. And again, it sounds cruel, it sounds mean, and maybe it is mean, but what else can you do?
But that doesn't really make you more free, though, right? I mean, then you're just like striving to get money to get by. Like you're
maybe
not like a free being.
So I've managed a lot of guys working in where I work in construction and that kind of thing, and you can always see the kid who walks in is like 18 or 19 years old, and you're like, he's gonna be fine. Just not worried about him. He's gonna be all right because he's smart, and more than smart, he's not an idiot. No, it's true.
Because those are different things.
Well, yeah, because I'm not like he's not brilliant. He's not a mathematician like genius, but he's not going to freak out on a customer or like he's not going to flip somebody off on the highway in a company car that has our phone number on the back. Those kind of things. And it's like those are the things. Like, and what do you do? Again, I'm big on the I don't control reality thing. So if you're the type of guy who does those type of things, reality will bite back at you. I don't control reality. I'm just me trying to like have a family and succeed. Well, it sucks, but it's true. And another point, everyone I've ever, without exception, who I've worked with who's above the age of 50, making less than $15 an hour, if I've spent more than a day working with that person, driving around the state, I figure out why they're at that point. And almost always it's drugs, alcohol, or a crazy woman involved. And that's
or all
fact.
three.
Usually, almost always all three. And all of those are decisions you make.
I think it's important that, it has, like I said, something that if people decided one day, just for whatever reason, to like strive for things that improve conditions rather than decrease goodness in general, I'm of the belief, as many people would probably know over these many visits to this podcast,
20.
That there is like this sort of psychological prison or psychic prison that we're put into by groups of people,
Psychic vampires.
yes, who wield this sort of influence, and
I
they
got
like
that,
put
yeah.
people's minds in these boxes on purpose. So if we could just wake up tomorrow and like not have that happen, then I think people would be able to be fulfilled and increase in abundance could happen, and in a sort of like virtuous cycle where it increases like in feedback. Right now we're like on the other way down, where like things are becoming less fecund or less like the original creation and more like some sort of like weird hellscape where people are like trapped in the modern condition and don't even know what to do. Fucking 10-year-olds are committing suicide and stuff. Like that's wrong.
It's not always like
They're gonna fucking abort babies that were already born. That's called infanticide. Like, what are you talking about?
We can talk about that.
That's getting into La La Land now.
But there are objective realities that an individual can't control, no matter how much he wants to strive to be free, right? Whether it's the government or the market,
Yeah.
like you can't. at a certain point, you need to struggle just to survive.
Sure.
And I think that's what a lot of people do. I mean, I don't know how many, but a lot of people are just trying to get by.
But that's true. That's honest. That's real. You know, that's the name of the game, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
all these layers of sort of abstraction we've piled on top of that, or these reifications of just make believe that we've piled on top of that. When you get right back down to it, that's really what it's all about. But it's not like in a mean Darwinian sort of way. Like, people want to become what they can be to the best, and if they're not doing that, then usually, unless they're in total denial, which a lot of people are, or have been conditioned in a way not to think like that, then that's what people want eventually, you know.
Well, it's funny. I said I didn't want to go down a rabbit hole, but we definitely did there.
Sorry.
No, that's not. I'm saying.
Back to the State of the Union. Trump's a really bad teleprompter reader, let me tell you. His cadence and the roll of that thing just don't match. I think he's maybe a slow reader.
He had a couple good ones in there. He said,
And we are considered far and away the hottest economy anywhere in the world. Not even close.
Yeah, I actually wrote a note. It was people's sexiest economy alive.
so about 15 minutes in, he said,
Our economy is the envy of the world. Our military is the most powerful on earth by far. And America...
and that got a standing ovation. And it's at this point that I noticed that Ted Cruz and Rand Paul were sitting next to each other, which isn't that surprising, but they were also sitting next to Mitt Romney, which seemed really strange to me. Like, what did those three talk about?
Maybe it's like the also ran hangouts, you know, it's like their caucus.
Yeah. Which had Rick Santorum in there.
Yeah.
He's not even in office anymore.
Well, he's
right?
got a knife in his teeth. He's behind that Muslim congresswoman there.
Trump also said,
An economic miracle is taking place in the United States, and the only thing that can stop it are foolish wars, politics, or ridiculous partisan investigations.
There you go.
and that's when
The rhyme? Where's the
Pelosi. That's next.
All right.
But I wanted to stop here. So Pelosi scoffed at that, and this had me thinking, about the whole RussiaGate thing, because this is him making reference to it.
Yeah.
There's all these Democrats there, and at certain points, they're giving standing ovations.
Yeah.
If he is Putin's puppet,
Yeah.
if he
I thought the
is
same
a
thing, too.
traitor and a Manchurian candidate, why are they cheering this man? Why are they there?
That's the joke, right?
Yeah.
That's why people watch it. That's the only reason you watch it, is to see them stand up, not stand up, all those kind of things.
Chant USA, which I thought was awesome. The idiocracy's coming way faster than 500 years.
It was so funny though.
But it
And the
displays how it's fake professional wrestling bullshit, because they cheer Trump when it's something they like, and they ignore when Trump does something, or they cheer him when he bombs Syria or installs this new guy in Venezuela, and they still throughout it call him a Putin puppet, and these other things that he does are kind of divorced from that narrative.
Yeah, is it that? Do you think, because you're older than me, do you think
That was the end of the sentence. Do you think?
do you think that like
Old Peepaw Steve.
is that becoming more obvious because more people try and tune in and get involved in politics, or has that always been there, or is it
No.
just
This is
are the
way
cracks
more
starting
ramped
to
up than
show?
it's
Yeah,
ever
we're way
been.
out in fucking uncharted territory. Like, I have a note. I'm like, man, these fucking like constant standing ovations are fucking obnoxious. Like, stupid W.
Yeah.
That started with like 2001.
Yeah.
Did that first State of the Union, like when we first started bombing Iraq and Afghanistan, and like every other thing he said, everyone was just like, "Wah!"
So why is it getting like that?
Well, TV's
now, then?
changed a lot of things, but also our cultural values have changed a lot too.
Yeah, but it's just like,
when it comes to like war and
how
stuff
do you
like
not
that.
introspect? Like, even if you're one of them, how do you not introspect that like this is childish? Like,
Well, they don't care. They're playing to their audience as long as
Yeah,
they
they're
can
just
get-
worried about what is my audience.
yeah, how am I going to
seeing
get
right now?
reelected?
My
They just
thir-
imagine like their audience looking
Right.
at them.
Yeah.
All right, I have to stand for the right things, clap,
My 30%
clap and
base.
sit for certain things. Like, have the
To be fair,
exactly appropriate,
we do
appropriate
look
reaction.
at what they stand and sit at.
Trained monkeys.
Grow a Raj Al Ghul beard. And you see Ted Cruz's beard? That thing was weird. It's like
Yeah,
chin
it
was
is.
bald.
It's terrifying. If they were trained monkeys, I would like that. That'd be great. The problem is they're not. To be honest, the problem is that they don't do what the people want them to do, and they don't. They don't do what they say they're going to do. If they were trained monkeys, that'd be great. They would do it.
Right.
They don't.
No, they just talk out of one side of their mouth for the election and then do whatever they please once they're in.
And yeah, honesty is the biggest one for me. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, they're such liars, and like everyone gets so mad at Trump. It's like it's so obvious he's lying. I was like, so is it better if he was like a smooth liar,
exactly.
like Obama, or like what?
Yes.
That's exactly
That's what we want.
That's exactly the
We
way I
want
feel
tweetable
about it.
presidents.
Oh, we're with Saudi Arabia when he was like, no, we're not gonna break relations with Saudi Arabia. Like we're just not. And everyone was like, oh, I can't believe he said that. And I was like, but you agree with him though, so
Right.
why are you lying? I was glad he said it because I was like, honesty.
Hey,
this
all
is
right.
amazing.
Shoots from the hip
Yeah, and he's dishonest, but he's dishonest in an honest way, right?
in a very obvious sort of way.
Yeah,
too. Like, well, I
exactly.
didn't really. I don't know.
I'm gonna kill the guy next door.
Yeah.
Like that's honest because you know what I'm saying. Like you know, if you
Not
talk to him, you would yeah.
And I think this whole ramped up.
Okay, that's different.
This whole ramped up thing. I obviously I'm gonna sound like a total Trump thumper here, but he. I think he's trolling it out of them. Like he sort of says
Yes,
stuff and
absolutely.
draws them out. Then they do something like they overplay their hand, and now they look ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And he keeps trying to he creates this tension with the political class where they normally would just smooth criminals to each other. They'd sort of smile and do their thing, and then talk about whatever they wanted in the back rooms.
I think actually
I can
that
see some
that
of
was one of my chief thoughts about this State of the Union was that he was like the most centrist Republican ever.
Yeah, I know.
Like he was, and that's the thing about it is, and it's so weird. Like you would never have expected it. Like on the campaign trail, he seemed in some instances like extremely right wing.
Yeah.
So like even the way he would talk about illegal immigrants is he would say things like, "There's some bad people coming over the border and killing and raping people," and he would be very vague about it intentionally, so that you could say like
A lot of bad people.
He could say he's being a racist, or you could say he's talking about coyotes, like whatever you want to say, you could say. But then in this speech, he was extraordinarily specific about it.
Right.
And then he said things that I, like as a conservative kind of person, was like, no, I don't like that idea.
Right.
Like when he's talking about like mandatory, not mandatory, but a parental leave. For having children, and then he was talking, and then what was the phrase he used? He used the phrase, I don't remember what he used. Oh, protecting patients with pre-existing conditions.
and to protect patients with pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
Which is like, in the last, since Obamacare has been
it's
like
a
a
huge
Democrat
distortion.
catchphrase.
Yeah.
So it's like he's intentionally using these phrases, but because they already are so dedicated to hating him, they have to hate him when he says things that they actually like.
Right.
So it's like,
And he has a good time with it.
Yeah,
Like when the
right.
women started clapping, he's like, even you got to clap for that one.
Yeah.
Stay up. You're
Gotcha.
going to love this. And you're like,
Yeah,
he's just
exactly.
like riffing
It
him
really
so
has become
hard.
Idiocracy.
and then you see, for me, when you were talking about the New York and the Virginia thing, the abortion, like when they pan over to all the women in white, when he says like, I mean, I don't necessarily even think the federal government should have anything to do with abortion, but when he says like a ban on I think he said late term abortions, and they're just like Cortez was like just like
Yeah.
like death
Throw
stare
him.
at him. For me, that one is like it's eerie, man. When you see it, you're like, this is no longer like if you have to do it, if you're really gonna
Right.
die or like you're sick. It's like you look like you want to kill babies.
Yeah.
Like that's a different thing. Like that freaks me out.
Yeah, man.
That freaks me out a lot more than the technology question.
I think it snowballs because I think
Lot
like what you said, like what we've been talking about. Like they have to put on this show. They have to show their constituents how they are, and I think they build off each other to where you get people that are like that, and they don't try and differentiate like different. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to like try and
Well, and what's
have
the
any
knee-jerk
conversation.
reaction
Yeah,
with
they
like
just
a
get
a
pissed
woman's
off.
rights kind of woman or a progressive kind of woman is like, oh, you're taking
They
away
just-
the rights of women. I'm like, hey, man, listen, if a baby can breathe on its own, if you separate it from the mother, we're not talking about that anymore. That's a different thing now.
So, You guys kind of skipped ahead here. I really wanted to mention the rhyme.
Oh yeah.
There was a rhyme.
If there is going to be peace and legislation, there cannot be war and investigation. It just doesn't work that way.
Nice. You know he came up with that with himself. The speechwriter is like, well, he's like, no, we're putting it in there. We're putting it in there. I was on the toilet this morning.
I will fire you in a heartbeat.
He also went off for a while about criminal justice reform, and he
That's another one of the ones.
introduced
First step back.
Alice and some
That's
other
another one of the things
But
he
he's
does
racist,
to make
though.
himself centrist so that he makes them look like idiots.
Yeah, because how are you going to disagree with that? You know,
Yeah.
so they just end up shooting themselves in the foot.
Matthew Charles. He was sentenced to 35 years for selling drugs. I know. 35 years. That's longer than I've been alive.
You know what, it really
drugs.
been-
I want to know the details about that, because a
Statistics.
lot of those are.
He said the only thing he said was
Well, if he was like in Oklahoma,
was selling
If
drugs.
he was pointed out at the State of the Union.
He only said selling
That's probably
drugs
true.
and related crimes, so it didn't sound like the guy.
Yeah, but even those. I
did
don't
he
know-
kill somebody?
Yeah, well,
35 years.
I don't know
Well,
anything
I don't
about
think that
that.
would
but-
be
mandatory
honest,
sentences for
related
crack are a lot
crimes.
worse than coke
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
because they want to put black people in jail so they can't reproduce. If you're in jail with a bunch of other guys, you can't have babies.
I was surprised he
Dark.
didn't mention like more about drug policy and just like reducing, because he talked about the First Step Act, which would reduce like recidivism, but he didn't talk about like the obvious step before then and not jailing non-violent.
Well, he's playing in the middle of the field.
Yeah, or,
Yeah, but-
decriminalization.
Well, it's the same reason he talked about decriminalization. Well, not even the same reason he talked about the drugs, but then also
But
talked about
Democrats
abortion.
support decriminalization.
But then-
so like, why didn't he tout?
Because he's
some of
playing the middle.
successes
He's
of
playing
it?
the middle of the field. He's not playing the left of the field. He's still got to maintain his base. That's why he still talks about the wall. But he says, well, some kind of barrier, because he switched to the middle of the field,
Exactly. So that was
which is brilliant because
that
they
was the
hate him
next
so
thing.
much now that they look like idiots.
That was the next thing.
Especially
he
there
brought
were clips from like the early 2000s, where they're just saying the exact same shit. He's like
Yeah.
basically just copying their speeches. So what's Chuck Schumer going to say?
up. Well, in all fairness, the same thing happened with Obamacare because that was Romney care originally.
Right.
So it's a stupid game.
Except that the difference is that people on the right think Romney's an idiot for doing that.
And speaking of,
The vast majority of people would say that they would have preferred him over the other option, but that they think that Romney is.
Well,
is
I don't
stupid.
know. There are clips of Pelosi getting heckled too. Like, there's like a crowd of immigrants like shouting her down. If you ever,
I
seen
mean,
that.
like right wing commentators and media people.
Yeah, but how much like extreme left wing like communist media is there? Like, I think like
Young
most
Turks.
of the
The one that I
but like MSNBC
Not
is
necessarily
like
extreme.
left of center maybe. Like they're not like
It depends what you mean.
well, they fluctuate within house.
It
on
depends.
social issues, they're pretty far on one direction or the other. When you're talking about warfare and stuff, the stuff that really matters, then yeah, they're kind of towing the line with their other networks.
yeah.
It depends. Talk about Russia.
But that
Investigations,
would
those
make
kind of
them
things.
hawks. That makes them more hawkish than the right wing, and it's
Well,
That's not
it's
really
a
left
way.
or right. That's more like
No, I'm not talking about externally. I'm talking about as far as the Russian investigation and lambasting Trump. In my mind, that's a completely different issue from actual foreign policy with Russia. Those things are clearly not connected in politicians' minds whatsoever, at least on the left. But that's just because it's not meant to be consistent. It's just meant to be.
Well, yeah, it's weird because like, how do you reconcile that with them canceling the missile treaty and shit? Like, it just doesn't. Like,
Right.
It's the cognitive dissonance required to hold that belief must be so massive. Like,
Well,
you must
Hillary,
not be able to.
Hillary
think,
Clinton
really.
said that Trump ripping up the nuclear agreement is a massive gift to Russia. So that's their line of reasoning.
The only way that could be.
Well, yeah,
true-
because they have all our uranium now. Thanks, Hill Dog.
Yeah. The only way that could be true is if a new deal was negotiated that was more in their favor, or like he said, involves China. But
The U.S. military
above my-
is bigger than the next 10
Like, I don't know.
militaries combined. So how is getting rid of treaties helping any other country, helping China, helping, I don't know, any
Yeah,
EU
doesn't
country?
make
It
a
doesn't
whole
make
lot
any
of sense.
But didn't they? And
It
they
would-
just tested an
again.
ICBM that was like longer range than our missile defense. Like it had, and it's countered.
it's not
system.
about winning or losing. It's about the will of the people, right? So, like, if we had World War III, of course, yeah, we would win. But our people would never.
I think
I don't think it's about
die.
war.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, if it came out to an all-out war and we fought till the last man, okay, maybe we would win, or maybe the planet would
It's not
explode.
about that, man. You ever see the end of Terminator 3?
But no, but that's
Nuclear war.
no, but that's what I'm saying. Like, the will of the people would never get to that point. So those kind of things are like, we're talking about like, are we going to kill 10 or 20, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people? Those are the arguments that matter, not the, are we going to all die from World War III in Russia? Like, I don't think that those, when you say we're the most powerful nation on earth, I'm saying my concern isn't whether or not we're going to be overthrown by Russia.
Yeah, but no.
My concern is if we're going to kill 50,000 people who don't need to die.
But there are also like proxy wars and shit, like Vietnam
sure,
and
of course.
Korea and Afghanistan. That was all about like
Syria,
U.S.
everything.
versus Soviet Union.
It still is not all about that, but
Did you see that?
Yeah,
a lot.
Syria,
A lot.
Venezuela. I mean, it's all about that shit.
it's a good amount. Yeah. There's more in the Middle East.
Going
than
off
just
like
that.
the military thing, they had like a demo, I think in either England or Australia, and it was like they militarized like a whole bunch of swarming drones with explosives on them, so that, and they had like facial recognition, so you basically like plug in like, this is my target, and they just fly out, and the explosion would like blast into his skull and kill him. And they were talking about just mass producing, and
It's pretty cool. Let's do that.
Yeah.
It's sad. Like it's gonna get to
Reeks
the point
of
where you can just like kill somebody by just by pushing a button. Like, oh, I want
Yeah.
that person to die.
Well, it'll be like nanodust too. Like, do you ever see that?
That's why I believe in the Second Amendment, Steve.
That's
Because you can shoot the dust.
No, I didn't say that's why I believe in the right to have rifles. I said that's why I believe in the
okay.
Second Amendment.
we'll be walking around
that's
with our own
different.
Boring
drones,
nanodust.
drone orbiting defense
spraying
systems.
people's face starts melting.
Get your drones away from me.
Also, those things require economies to support that kind of technology. So, it'll be bad, but not everybody will die.
Yeah, just government enemies.
On a lighter note, do you think Chuck Schumer and Donald Trump are actually friends? I think they are.
Chuck
because
Schumer's
they
always
kept-
smiling.
They
all
kept
the time.
showing.
Yeah.
He looks like he just wants to go have a beer with Trump so bad and just like laugh about this whole thing. Like, you know, New Yorkers got to stick together. They probably like knew each other before, anyways. And like,
I'm sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Cynthia McKinney said that's why she quit the Democratic Party, because she was at some congressional hearing where these two congressmen were like going at it, and then she went to a bar that night and they were like patting each other on the back and drinking together.
Yeah.
This is fucking bullshit.
Yeah, it's all kayfabe.
Yeah,
Iron
and I mean that's good.
Duncan.
That's good if we're not talking about like Russian interference and like if we're talking about like you think the government's doing too much, I think the government's doing too little. We don't hate each other because we're all Americans. Like that's good. But if I'm
As long
saying
as, like,
you're a
people aren't being
Russian,
hurt.
you're a Russian spy, let's go for a beer. That's when it's no longer acceptable.
But yeah, I mean,
But if they
that's
if they
why,
were
again,
honest-
that's why politics is professional wrestling, because you know it's fucking Nikolai Volkov and Hacksaw Jim Duggan hanging out. Or
You know
Iron
what
Sheik
though?
on it.
I think a lot of that though is just because of media exposure and what we care about. Because there are politicians who I don't really like Lindsey Graham that much, but someone like Lindsey Graham who is most of the time pretty honest, and he's like, "Listen, I don't agree with this guy. I think he's so wrong about this, but he's okay." And every now and then he's like, "You're so wrong. You're the worst." But someone like Lindsey Graham is never saying something like, "You're a Russian spy," or like you hate people, or you're a communist, or those kind of things.
I don't know. He
Not-
said
not
some
to-
crazy shit about like I don't know, Muslims and wars and
That's
Iraq
I'm
and
talking
Syria
about
and shit
talking
like
about
that.
I'm talking about the relationship with politicians. So like he's not the one accusing other politicians of being Russian spies. And so someone like him isn't getting airtime for those kind of things. And all those other smaller
Wait,
congressmen-
Lindsey Graham isn't getting airtime?
not for those type of things.
He is getting a lot of airtime.
He's getting airtime for what you talked about, though. He's getting airtime for when he talks about being a war hawk, or lately for the Kavanaugh hearings when he went hard on somebody. He's not getting noticed for when those things when he says like when he says things that sound buddy, that's when people hate him, and that's when people don't want to hear from him.
I think he was getting a lot of airtime right after Trump first took office when he was critical of Trump. Like, I can't name specific examples 'cause it's been a while,
Of
but
course.
like I remember seeing him on the night
But
of the news
even
like
in
every
those-
fucking night.
But even in those cases, like his criticism was not the "you're a fascist" criticism.
Right. No, definitely not.
And those are the things, like if you look at the numbers on mainstream networks, like it was like over 90 90% of coverage of Trump was negative in those things, and they'll always say like allegedly, especially with the Russian investigation. We're waiting for this new bombshell report, and those are the things people listen to. So I think a lot of that perception is because the 10 to 15% of congressmen who talk that way are the ones we hear the most from.
And Trump gets criticized when he does something that's trying to make peace with another country, like pulling troops out of Syria, like making any kind of deal with North Korea. But when he bombs Syria, or when he's backing this coup in Venezuela, he's getting media support. Like,
well, it depends too, because they had instances where the same author was like, "Oh, Trump shouldn't be bombing people in Syria. We don't belong there," and then like. Well, Trump shouldn't be pulling
fucking
troops
Rachel
out.
Maddow, she got famous because she wrote a book about was it a drift or something like that? Where it was about like how we're expanding our military overseas, and now she's a fucking like John Bircher essentially, just like insane about Russian collusion and having to stop the commies at every turn.
Well, it's because ISIS sucks for women, It's they got to like put the social justice spin on it. Oh, well, they're way against democracy and human rights. Like, man, do you guys not remember like when the neocons were doing like the same exact shit? Like, oh, he's gassing his own people and whatever.
Sorry to take a left turn here, but I found a transcript online here of the State of the Union, and it's just funny because they have all these annotations throughout. So it's like when he's talking about the angel moms and dads. It's like, here is more on how the Trump administration has used families who have lost loved ones to further its messaging on zero tolerance immigration policies.
Right, because he's the only politician who's
super objective.
Yeah.
His name is Joe Witzelberger.
Trump said that we're sending 3,750 more troops to the southern border. He talked about how
wealthy politicians and donors push for open borders while living their lives behind walls and gates and guards.
Yeah, I thought that was a good dig.
He talked about MS-13.
Put that knife in the ribs.
He said we're removing MS-13 by the thousands, but until our borders are secure, they keep streaming right back. And then he talked about we're not going to have a concrete wall. We're going to have a steel barrier.
This is a smart, strategic, see-through steel barrier, not just a simple concrete wall. It will be deployed in the areas identified by the border agents as having the greatest need.
Which, I thought was kind of funny, too, because it is inconsistency on Trump's part. I mean, I don't know if that's the art of the deal where you
for a politician
compromise.
That's as honest as you can get.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And you're right. It's what they call selling past.
But Trump would never say, "I'm conceding. I'm doing something here."
He did say that.
Did he?
I think he said something.
I think he would say, "This is what I've always been asking for."
I think he would say, "This is what I've always wanted." But that is. I'm not like a Trump's a genius kind of guy, but that is a legitimate
40 Chessman.
It is a legitimate strategy when negotiating. Is you sell past. I want a wall. I really didn't care about a wall. I mean, he doesn't want a wall anyway, right? He wants people to think he wanted a wall, and he did what he was supposed to do. And the majority of people would say, "Oh, fence, good enough." And again, it's going back to the middle. It's promising the extreme right so people hate you, and then going to the middle and saying, "You're an idiot. You thought I was like you're a crook. You can't agree to what you agreed to 2 years ago."
And he was, like you said, he was getting pretty specific with a lot of reasons why he wanted the border. Besides the gang members, he was also hitting like coyotes and human traffickers really hard too. And I don't know if many people follow Q around here or what, but that's sort of like the plan that is demonstrated in that posts. Those kind of posts too, is that's the whole reason they're doing it, is to kind of stop this global human trafficking / drugs / like illegal weapons kind of trade that is managed by these people in the political class. And it's hard to, you can't just go out and say stuff like that because you sound like totally nuts. So the incremental approach is sort of drawing the narrative towards what he eventually wants it to be ultimately. I saw being displayed a lot in that State of the Union. But then again, I might be just reading more too far into it.
So after that, Trump went after NAFTA. He was talking about how certain states were hurt by it. He specifically named Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, and New Hampshire. This New York Times transcript that I have says that Mr. Trump is carefully name-dropping key swing states that he might need to win in the 2020 re-election.
What website's that?
What is that from?
New York Times.
Oh,
That explains.
I mean,
I thought the media was so balanced, Steve.
but
I thought there was no left-wing commies in the media. Sorry. Go ahead.
well, I mean, is a trade agreement communist?
No, I was exaggerating when I said
the
commies.
mudslinging.
Left-wing, extreme left-wing. Yeah.
But I mean, I think it is kind of a fair point.
I would love
though.
to see those Obama transcripts.
Those.
And here's a picture of his family and his house and how much he loves the internet.
But those states
Some
did
Snapchat
vote for
photos.
Trump, and probably because of NAFTA. And I mean, I think it's probably partially true, but those states were hurt by NAFTA. Those are states that the Democratic Party, through Bill Clinton signing NAFTA, hurt, right? I mean, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, New Hampshire, they were hurt by NAFTA. I don't think that's really disputable. But he has this new thing called USMCA, which is his, I
Is
guess,
that the reciprocal tariff thing?
it's his like rebranded version of NAFTA, his trade agreement with
He
Mexico and
talked about
Canada.
it afterwards.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what is in the details there, but that was kind of a thing that I thought, before Trump took office, is that a lot of the sort of Obamacare, like just kind of rebranding that as Trump Care, and it seems like NAFTA just kind of rebranding that with his own thing. Like, are these things really objectively different, or is he just making them seem different? I don't know.
I haven't really read the details of either, to be honest. But as far as I can tell, it is different in regards to some of the protections that were granted to the other two countries and not to the United States. Like he seems to harp an awful lot on fair trade. He's like, I'm okay with free trade. I want open trade and all this, but it has to be equally fair. You can't say that okay, well, I'll trade with you for nothing, and then you're going to slap a 30% tariff on me for the same thing.
So after that, he talked about rebuilding the military.
Over the last 2 years, we have begun to fully rebuild the United States military with $700 billion last year and $716 billion this year.
Money well spent, no doubt.
New York Times says not mention the growing federal budget deficit. This year's deficit.
Oh, like they care.
Yeah,
well,
right.
They don't, but I mean,
I
it is true.
guarantee-
It's a got you, but it is true.
I guarantee that this year, with the House of Representatives, they will pass another increase. To
Right. Well,
the military.
that's what they're not saying.
They're
They should have a note here. All of the Democrats who are voting for Trump's expanded military budget.
that's how it works.
I got to be honest. I didn't watch the full State of the Union, but there's something highlighted here. Crowd sings "Happy Birthday."
Yeah, they sang "Happy Birthday" to
Holocaust survivor, I
the
think.
Holocaust survivor. Yep, which is nice, I guess.
It's cool.
Did you see his big anti-socialist point
Yeah.
he specifically made?
I saw
That was really weird to me.
news
There-
coverage
there's
on
some
that.
subtext there that I just don't have.
Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
Why would you just? I mean, that just seems strange to just openly write out and say we are never going to be socialist or whatever. When is that going to be tried? What is he thinking about?
But
Did you
is,
see did you see the freaking new Green Deal?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. Did you see what's inside it?
What?
The money
Just like
to
Cortez
unwilling
is
to
weird.
work.
Oh, it looks crazy. First of all, there's spelling errors and stuff in it, and grammar errors, which is
Well, they
hilarious.
say no air travel.
Oh, it's
and they want
way
to build rail.
so bad. Okay, so it's a pipe dream. Obviously, it's never happened, but it tells you what like where like AOC's like brain is like not only did they say no air travel, they said no combustion engines of any kind. No cars, nothing. They said every building, every residential and commercial building in the United States will be renovated for new energy.
By what year?
2020. They said by
What?
No, 2030. Sorry, I think 2030. 10 years. So
Yeah, okay.
and in 10 years that will be completely 100% renewable energy. And but what that will not include is nuclear power, which is insane. But yeah, renovate every building in the whole United States, including your house. No cars, no plane. They want to replace all planes with high-speed trains.
Those
And
underground Tesla ones that go like 3,000 miles an hour or whatever, the vacuum tube.
Do you hear that the people in
yeah.
Beverly Hills like got that stopped from being in their community?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Yeah, but there's no plastic bags or straws anymore, so they're doing
yeah,
pretty good
exactly.
there.
That's exactly. I've said this for the longest time. Like you're never gonna solve any of those problems by not letting you get plastic bags at Stop and Shop.
That's coming down the pike in Connecticut. I heard it on the news.
Yeah, like
It's
that's
gonna
not how that works.
be top of the platform. No more plastic bags. I'm gonna have to figure out what I'm gonna use for my garbage now.
I was telling Steve how she was smart to try and manipulate people with the title of the Green New Deal.
Green
But
Deal.
Well,
that
everybody gets
is
so
a
hard
Green
for
Party
it to
thing.
do.
Like
Yeah.
the Green Party came up with that like 15 years ago. Howie Hawkins, like. was
Well,
the
even if
author
they
of the
came
Green
up
Deal.
with it, it's just kind of like it's like getting that cheap support. Like,
Oh, they said jobs for everyone. Literally.
Is that
everyone.
part of
well,
that?
it's all just,
Well, there's no combustion engines. It's gonna take a lot of people on the treadmill. To
Yeah,
run
you're
those
gonna have
fucking generators at the hospital.
And to carry people around.
But that goes back to my thing earlier. Like,
It's
is that what
absurd.
we want? Is we want everybody?
No.
Do we want everybody employed for the sake of being employed, even if they're
No.
digging holes with spoons?
because that's just gonna
No.
impoverish people.
I don't think you'd ever have that though. I mean, okay, like you can imagine a sci-fi movie where it's like we have so much technology we don't need it, but at that point you're so far beyond what we can actually predict. You just don't know. You just
I don't know. If minimum wage was $8 million an hour, I'd dig a hole with a spoon.
Sure. Well, what if a
Don't worry.
gallon
Eventually,
of milk was
Yeah.
$10 billion?
Well, it's fine. My house is only 160,000, so I'll be done in 20 minutes. Fucking pay off the house. I'll be doing all right.
Yeah, there was other crazy things in there. But I can't
Inflation
think of
helps
them all.
debtors. Remember.
Yeah, so I didn't get the rest of the speech. My time has been extremely limited lately. So, was there anything? I'm just scrolling through this. Something about the rocky shores of Maine and the volcanic peaks of Hawaii. I don't know.
He
I missed
mentioned
that one.
like a transparency deal for healthcare, like insurance and drug companies and all, like pharmaceuticals. Like, he wanted to have them be like print out like the actual cost. I can bring it up in a sec.
Oh yeah. I mean, transparency and pricing is like a huge
Yeah.
problem with medical care.
I do have to say that
Lower the cost of it.
I am very in favor of the individual mandate being done away with.
Oh, being done.
Oh yeah, it just
Yeah.
jacks up. He said,
Yeah, dude, I haven't been to the doctor in like 10 years. Like,
Well, being taxed for not having health
It's-
insurance, like what kind of
Yeah.
insane backwards world is that a good thing?
well, it just
Right.
jacks up the cost
Democrat
of everything
logic.
anyway.
look at Lamont. We're gonna tax fucking food, people driving on roads, and medication.
this-
yeah, go working class.
This
like
is
right
one
up
of
your
the
ass,
one of the
man.
more promising things he said. I mean, I can't say promising because who knows what he's going to do, but or push. But he said, "We must do more. It is unacceptable that Americans pay vastly more than people in other countries for the exact same drugs." Kind of leaning towards like, I mean, to me, I kind of read it into it also as like FDA approval. Like it kind of touches on that vein of like other companies have those approved. He didn't say that explicitly, but like hopefully that would be the mentality that he's, because that would also help lower costs if people have access to other tried and true drugs.
Oh no, he did talk about passing. What do they call it? It's like give it a chance or
Right to
something.
try.
Right to try. That's what it is.
Well, it's ridiculous that that isn't already a thing.
Yeah, like I'm gonna die. Sorry, you might
Yeah,
die.
why
if you
can't I
take
try the
medication.
drug that Japan like
No.
approved? Yeah,
You're definitely
Big
gonna
Pharma
die
said
without
no.
it, but you might die with it. Yeah, that's insane.
So at the end of the speech, the New York Times highlighted, "Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America." And it says,
Obama.
"Once again, the president made no mention of the investigation by the special counsel Robert S. Mueller III into Russian interference in the 2016
he
election,
made the run.
and whether the president obstructed justice. Mr. Mueller's findings, assuming they are made public, could go a long way towards determining what kind of year Mr. Trump has."
Did Chen Guga write that?
Yeah. That's crazy.
Man, what objective analysis that is.
It's such non-news. Like if there was news, we would know about it.
Why would that be in a
that was
State of the Union
They were
address?
chomping at the bit for anything.
By the way, thank you all for investigating me.
Just so
My
you
collusion
know-
with the Russian government. I am a Russian pawn.
See, this is why I could never be
Pootie,
president.
stand up, Pootie.
Yeah, I could never be president because I would end the speech with "Thank you, God bless you, God bless America, and Putin. I'll see you later tonight. I will be waiting for your phone call.
It's so stupid.
Thanks, Putin. I appreciate everything you've done.
Never
for me.
had prostitutes pee on me. All right, not in Russia, anyways.
Actually, it wasn't that they peed on him. It was that they peed on each other
Oh, okay.
on the bed.
I mean, let's
Obama
get it
slept on.
straight.
Well,
Right.
he is a germaphobe.
Which, by the way,
Pee is sterile though,
Is it?
that report
unless you have an
by the
infection.
Clinton administration given to the government.
So how do you
How
guys
does that
think
work?
this RussiaGate investigation is going to end? I mean, is it gonna
I haven't
fizzle out
followed
over
it
time?
since,
Is it just
like-
gonna be like forever? Is it just
I think it's just gonna die. Like it's just gonna simmer out.
I think what's going to happen is not a simmer. Nothing's going to happen because the Robert Mueller report is going to show. I mean, there might be some like shadiness in every campaign that there always is, and there might be someone who's indicted, but certainly Trump's not going to be
they
indicted.
are indicting people, but
Not for Russia,
They
yeah.
are not being indicted for collusion.
That's what
They're
I
being
mean.
indicted for lying to Congress, for
The lies to
tax
Congress were
fraud.
like insane.
Influencing Ukrainians for a Democratic lobby.
with Roger Stone.
Yes, but it's all of this shit is like not directly somebody colluding with the Russian government to interfere with the 2016 election.
Right.
It's
Right.
what connections did you have with Russians?
And did you-
X, Y, and Z. Oh, you forgot about this one. Okay, so then they indict that
he
person.
he called instead of emailed or something like that. That was the Roger Stone one. And did you see Roger Stone's kind of a scumbag, but did you see when they stormed his house and the reporter was there?
Yeah.
And they
Yeah,
asked
they
the
were like,
reporter how he knew, and he literally said, a reporter's intuition or like a hunch. And everybody's
Wander
like,
down the street with my film crew.
it's like, oh, so what you mean is that the FBI told you they were going to be there, which is illegal.
And by the way, this happened 1 week after the BuzzFeed news article got retracted. So it was like a huge black eye for the investigation.
Right.
Okay, let's go bust Roger Stone. Let's get
Right.
everything ramped back up again. Which is, the timing with this shit is so fucking
It's all
ridiculous.
smoke and mirrors.
What's going to happen is
Well,
by
like
the
when
way,
all those
nothing-
Russians got indicted, the Russian trolls, that was the same week that Trump was meeting with Putin. It's like the timing of the shit is so political, you know?
It's going to disappear.
It's so
It's going to
obvious if you
disappear.
look.
Though.
Yeah.
I think that Mueller will end up having to recuse himself because he'll be under investigation for uranium one.
I honestly don't like.
Did you hear the hearing for Whitaker?
No.
Those fucking Dems were dancing like they're at the end of their rope, like a fucking puppet. You know, they were like, "Are you going to not say that the Mueller or will you say that the Mueller investigation is not a witch hunt?" I'm like, what kind of fucking senator question is that? Like, that is some of the stuff they were saying. Check it out, because some of the highlights, I was like, are these people actually saying this? They're sweating bullets. Like, they're in big trouble and they fucking know it.
So what is uranium one? Because it's been a while since I like researched it. It's that Hillary Clinton sold uranium to Russia when she was Secretary of State.
Yeah, and that the Clinton Global Initiative and Frank Giustra like facilitated that by Bill Clinton and Frank Giustra meeting with the head of some Turkmenistan or something like that. I think it was Turkmenistan. And through like Rosatom and backdoor the Russian nuclear agency through this company like purchased strategic reserves of uranium that the Hillary Clinton's Department of State like sold to them.
I don't know. Like, to me, that stuff kind of just sounds like an inverted version of Russiagate, you know? Because it's all kind of like partisan, like fear mongering against Russia. Like, ooh, Russia's got our uranium, or they're colluding with this person. Like, I don't know. Does it really matter?
I think what will happen is that it depends on the election. the next coming election. I think if Trump loses, suddenly he just won't be in the news anymore. And won't be reported on hardly ever again.
Dude, the Clinton Global Initiative is like one of the greatest frauds that has ever occurred in history. So that goes beyond partisanship, really.
No, I meant the Russia investigation.
Yeah, but I was
into
just
Trump.
talking to Steve when he said it didn't really matter.
I know, but like, I don't.
And it goes deeper. That's just one of the facets. Like I said, the whole thing is built upon basically the slave trader mentality. There's all these same blue blood Boston Brahmin families that really control Washington. They're the same fucking families.
No, I'm not saying they're not bad. People aren't profiting off of it,
but that's just one facet. It's human
I just think
organs,
that like
it's
all this shit
sex
like
slaves.
plays into this greater like military industrial complex narrative of we have to be on guard against Russia or China or the Muslims or whatever.
That I do agree with you. But if it's the means to take down the sort of darker side of it, that's just the window dressing that gets people whipped up.
But isn't that what the Democrats are kind of doing? Because like Trump is the bad guy, so even if I don't know, just by any means necessary, like
yes, and
if
no.
there was some kind of illegal contact between Trump and Russia, like.
But the difference
that
is
just
that
kind of is
investigation
going to play into a larger campaign of McCarthyism and like a new Cold War.
Potentially, but I think that investigation is more political theater because it's so public. Like a lot of this other stuff is happening sort of behind the scenes. Like a couple days ago, Huawei just got in trouble for stealing, trying to reverse engineer technology for diamond-plated glass. And like besides just the vice president or director of operations getting indicted or something in the United States, like the whole company now is in trouble, and they're tying it to Chinese defense. They were using Huawei as a go-between to get this sample of glass and then try to fucking reverse engineer it by breaking it. So this is like there's all this stuff that's not being reported because of the Mueller investigation or because of whatever sort of kabuki that they want to put on the news.
I mean, it's always the case, right?
Because the real shit's happening, like that.
I mean, even if it's like mad cow disease or the bird flu or whatever, right? Like
Right.
They're always like, hey, look over here. Don't fucking look at the man behind the curtain.
But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they understand like the noose is tightening, and it isn't just politicians; it's also the media people too who openly collude with these politicians, like Donna Brazile, having to resign and shit like that.
Definitely.
Like that's all part of this. Uranium One is one facet of this giant octopus, Clinton octopus that covers the world, and really runs billions and trillions of dollars of just fraud, political kickbacks, and criminal activities. Like it's like they're like the mafia. Like they really are like the fucking like super global mafia.
Well, I mean, so towards that end,
Trump's just what is he?
Well, towards that end, I mean, I would agree. Like it would be better if we got all of these people out of power, whether it's the Clintons or Trump or Putin. But
Right.
how do you do that without it being this sort of nationalistic, paranoid sort of Cold War type thing? Because we all just kind of fall in line
I
at
don't
some
know if
point,
you
and
can.
it's like Saddam has WMDs. We have to do something about it.
I don't know if you can, because it'd be like speaking a different language to people. Like those. When did the Cold War start? 1948, 1949, if you want to put a starting date on it. So like, how many generations is that from us even now? Never mind younger people than us. You're already talking 2 to 3-ish, like fear of Russia phobia is ingrained in our mindset. So like, to just say all of a sudden like, oh, well, it's no big deal. He sort of sprinkles stuff when he talks about unnecessary wars and stuff. And in the past, even before he was a president, they'd have interviews like, what's the greatest threat to the world and whatever. And he'd say nuclear war, nuclear war, nuclear war all the time. Like, I think Trump in reality is a dove. He just knows that he has to sort of say it. And he'll say it too. He'll say, we have to have the biggest, best, beautiful military, so we never have to use it. So we never have to use it. He says that all the time.
Drop bombs in Syria once a year so he doesn't get a...
Hey, that wasn't that bad considering.
And you don't know what they were really
the
dropping bombs on. Like
the day that happened, everybody I know on the internet who's like below the age of like 30 or 35 was like, it's coming. We're going to war with Syria next week. And it didn't. And that's pretty unusual.
That's the thing. Like you don't know what we were dropping bombs on. We may have been dropping bombs at our
No, that's what I'm saying.
bases,
Is like it seems like he's just kind of appeasing them. It's like, all right, how many tomahawks do I got to fire off this year so you don't blow my head off?
You know, it could be.
Honestly, though, like, is that an okay strategy? Like, that's the world is the world we live in. Like, I don't know.
And these are the hands we're given.
And he's
Well,
the
that-
deal
that's
maker, so he
that's a lot
understands,
further
you know?
than like you said.
Singing
There's
the
something going
words to
on
that
there.
song.
Well,
that I
I'm
don't
just glad that he's.
I don't know that's too. I don't know. I couldn't know that. I don't have the
Taking a
information.
less involved.
Yeah, there's subtext in everything. I think a lot of it is
Especially international. Yeah.
the overt things that we see or we're talking about or whatever. I feel are actually purposely there to distract from the subtext that's actually occurring. You know,
At
Q
least
calls it the
some.
storm or what you will. That military exercise in LA, did you see that video where the Black Hawk
Yeah.
helicopters
That
are
was pretty
flying
sick,
like
actually.
30 feet up off the ground and then the soldiers are running around? And they're like, oh, it was a military exercise. Okay, maybe. Could be arresting somebody.
No, I think it was a military exercise, but it's not it's not so one day they can perform in fucking Iraq. It's so, if people start rioting,
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
Again, that's why I believe in the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
Just
No,
saying.
I do too.
It's not.
Well, it's not that I believe in the Second Amendment. It's that I believe in a person's natural right to defend themselves.
That's the same thing.
But no, it's not, because I think a lot of conservatives get hung up on the Second Amendment and the Constitution.
That's
that
'cause they haven't
whatever
read
is in the government's law is law. But
No, that would
there
be
is a law
because-
above the law. There's a natural right to defend
Right,
yourself.
and that's what it says. These rights that are ordained by our Creator. Like, so if you think that, it's because you didn't read it.
Is that the Constitution or the it's the
no.
Declaration, right?
No, but if you've read founding documents, I'll say that.
Yeah.
It's littered with that kind of language of ordained by our Creator.
Contradict that.
Right.
the
So
next paragraph.
so it's like that. If you've read those founding documents, then that's what you would think anyway. If you haven't, then
And a lot of
That's
the,
on-
the Bill
yeah, I
of
don't know what
Rights
to say.
is mostly negative. Like they
was
don't-
me- it was
they don't
No, it's
say-
restricting government.
They didn't
don't
even
say
want
what
it.
the
There
government
was-
does. It's what they can't do.
there were some founding fathers who didn't even want it because they said if we put this in here, they're going to think like there's some things they can do, and we don't want
That's
to
what
do
the
anything.
That's what the 9th and the 10th are about, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
10th
by the way, you can't do all this other
But that's
shit.
why they put it in because originally there was some founding fathers who didn't want it at all because they said, listen, if we wanted them to be, if we didn't put it in the Constitution, then they can't do it. So we don't need these negative rights, but then they agreed to do it anyway. And then we ignored it anyway, so okay.
Right.
Well, guys, I appreciate you joining me for this recap of the State of the Union. I have to go, but I already asked you for your predictions on the Russiagate thing, so I don't know what else to ask you for your predictions on. How about this? Who's going to win the 2020? Or sorry, how about this? Who's going to be the Democratic nominee for the 2020 election? John, we'll start with you.
Oh, okay. I have to think. It's easier to say who it won't be. It won't be
Elizabeth Warren.
It won't be Elizabeth Warren. Pocahontas will not be. She made it worse. Cory Booker won't. It's tough to say who will. I want to say, what's her name? She just announced.
Kamala.
Yeah, Kamala Harris. She checks a lot of those boxes. Mainly, she's white. She's black, and she's a woman. Unfortunately, that makes a big difference. Obviously, the problem with her is that she was a prosecutor, and they don't like that.
Kamala Harris was a cop.
And quite the mistress.
Is a cop.
No, they don't care about that. They care about the. So, I mean, it's possible to say but it's either her or Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah, it seems like they turned against him recently. He was like an early favorite, and then like the
Yeah.
past couple months, it's like, forget
He's a
about
white
that
guy,
guy.
right?
He's too white. You wouldn't know it because he pretends his name is Beto.
Robert.
Yeah, exactly.
Short for Robert.
Robert.
O'Rourke.
Hello there. My name's
Ethan.
Robert O'Rourke.
Ethan, who do you think's going to be
Kamala
the
Harris.
Democratic
I think,
nominee?
Kamala Harris.
I think it'll be Kamala Harris.
Jack.
The disembodied head of Ruth Bader Ginsburg in a jar.
Hillary Clinton.
80% 12. Yeah, or Hillary Clinton again.
Yeah, if Hillary or Biden entered,
Oh, yeah, that's true.
then they would win
Joe
automatically.
Biden, I mean,
I
he's
don't know,
got to have
Biden-
skeletons in the closet. That
Biden's
dude's a
pretty
fucking
easy to
straight
just
creep.
you just run a commercial of him with that little girl.
A lot of people
And
don't
no
know
one-
about that though. I was
So
surprised.
just
Like
air it.
I thought
Well,
everybody knew about
yeah.
that, but they don't.
You just air it and
it's
no
because the
one's
media,
gonna-
Steve. This is what I've been talking about all night long.
I also think it's going to be Kamala. I'm hoping that Tulsi Gabbard gives her a run for her money, just because she's getting the anti-war message out there. But I think it's going to be a similar thing of 2016, where the super delegates and whatnot kind of collaborate behind. The,
I don't think it'd be as close as it was in 2016,
Yeah,
though.
probably not. All right, well, I got to go. Thank you guys for joining me, and hopefully we can have you back 1 year from now.
All right, 21. I'll drink.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the time to reignite the American imagination. This is the time to search for the tallest summit and set our sights on the brightest star.